Today I'm going to show you how to use the NouraSoft application. So far, all I've done is go up to the Import button in the top left-hand corner. If we click on Import, we have a couple options. We can open an STL or OBJ file. This selection will not open the color in the scan. However, if we open an OBJ folder, this will open the entire OBJ folder with its contents and bring the color in the scan as you see it here. So that's what I've done. I've selected the scan that I'm looking to manipulate here with NouraSoft. So right-click and drag on your mouse rotates around. So you can see the color of where I have pretty heavily modified this test socket for a push. This color comes up because I drew on the inside of the socket before I sprayed the inside of the test socket with the A-sub blue scanning spray. And this color comes up in that region just to kind of note where I did that modification. I did the same thing for the posterior trim lines here, gave them a bit more of a flare, and then I did a modification at the fibular head to blow this out a little bit, give some relief. So this was a bulldog lock socket. If you click on the center scroll bar of your mouse, that is to pan around and you can zoom in and zoom out. So we notice down here at the bottom we do have the distal end for the bulldog lock. So we'll go ahead and underneath the first selection here, the selecting tool on the left-hand side, you can select either with a sphere, and if you hold down Control and left click, you can deselect that region. You can increase the radius of the selection region. Or you could also use the box to left click and drag to select an area where you want to delete something out. So for this purpose, I'll go ahead and just make this more anatomically shaped down at the distal. I'll click on Select Through so that it selects all the way through the model. And if I didn't want to select that much, maybe I can go back to Sphere, uncheck the Select Through, hold down Control on my keyboard, and then left click, and I can deselect maybe what I don't want to delete. All right, so if I wanted to delete this much from the scan, I can click on Delete. Now we have an open hole on the bottom distal end here. So on the left-hand side, I'll go to Fill Hole and simply hover over these boundary areas. You just need to left-click and it will close that hole for you. You'll notice that maybe an edge is slightly jagged. We can then go to the Smooth Brush option and smooth that out. What I will note is we're not going to do this for the proximal end because what we actually want to do is click on Positive Limb after we do the smoothing, and this is going to create a proximal extrusion just past the trim lines with about a 3mm extrusion outward so that you can see where these trim lines are at in space. So we'll go to Smooth Brush. So we could go down to the distal ends. And again, we can increase the brush radius and increase the strength as we need to. And just left click and drag over that region to generally smooth that transition as you'd like. So there are no other clinical modification tools present currently within the Noura scanner NouraSoft environment. But we can simply clean up the mesh with the smoothing tool. You can also smooth the proximal edge by clicking on Only Trim Line and left click and drag so that the trim line becomes much more smooth and closer to the shape that you had intended it to be. The accuracy of the Noura scanner will grab the trim lines almost exactly as they are on your socket. However, this allows you some flexibility to clean up that model just a little bit more. So if I'm generally happy with how the trim lines look, we can modify that further in modification software as needed. What I'll do is click on positive limb on the left-hand side. So now we just click on this proximal trim line, light blue color here, and this is going to automatically turn our negative open-ended scan shape into a positive closed and remeshed shape. So after this is complete, we do see the trim lines that are indicated on the model. And it's completely closed in the proximal. When we go up to the top view bar here, we can click on view. You can either see the fully colored view or the shaded view, and even a wireframe if you so choose. We can also check on some measurements over here on the right-hand side. So we can set a starting circumference, and there, if I hover over the model, I can line up one of these circumference levels with MPT, and they can extend all the way down the limb in 25mm increments. I can measure the height. If I do that from MPT, that will go directly straight down to the distal. And maybe I wanted to measure the PML, so I can click on one spot, right click and drag, come over to the exact same spot on the other side, and now that is a through the model PML measurement as you'd like to see that. So we can also hide the measurements, or again show the measurements, and you have the measurement table over on the right-hand side to check your measurements as you go. If you needed to, you could also rotate the model in space. So if you needed some other orientation when the scan came in, you can certainly orient the model in here as well. So if we're done with the positive limb, we are just going to simply export. Well, now we can export as an STL, which will not grab any of the color that's still in the scan. But if we export the OBJ, then this will grab the color in the scan. So if you'd like to see that in your next modification software, I would suggest exporting this as an OBJ model. For what it's worth, there are a couple options here in terms of the viewing area. We can hide the controls bar, hide the measurements bar. We can go from a dark theme to a light theme. And otherwise, in the upper right-hand corner, you can click on the and rotate around the different views on the cube in the upper right-hand corner. And you can click on the home button to kind of get to this diagonal view. So I hope this was a good overview first of how to use the NouraSoft application. And please reach out to us with any questions. Thank you.